I love Savage rifles, but if there's one thing that's holding back the maximum accuracy potential of these budget rifles like the Savage Axis, it's going to be the plastic stock. It's a little bit flexible, and even though this does feel better than the stock that they've had on previous budget models like the Stevens 200, I still would not want to trust this in a competition. And that's actually what I'm doing with this rifle. If you're following the series, you know that I am turning this into a 1,000 yard competition rifle, and I'll actually be testing this in a 600 yard and a 1,000 yard match later this year. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure to subscribe to the Social Regressive so you see the new videos when they come out. If you like us on Facebook, then you can see some behind the scenes footage, and then this playlist down here has everything in it. At the time that I'm shooting this video, there are really only a few options for replacement stocks for the Axis. There are going to be 4 different shapes from Boyds. There's the Classic, and then the Prairie Hunter, which drops the heel and the toe just a little bit compared to the Classic. And both of those I will not consider just because of their shape. They have this hunter-style grip, which is going to be very uncomfortable in the prone. As the counts start rising, you can see that if I'm trying to keep my hand on the grip and keep my elbow on the ground in a prone-style shooting stance, you'll see that it's just very uncomfortable on the wrist, and it doesn't present a very flush pull on the trigger. So we're not going to do that. Thankfully, Boyds has 2 different other shapes. They have the featherweight thumb hole, which starts to go just a little bit more vertical, and then you have the Pro Varmint, which I think used to actually be called the Tacti-Cool, and it has a very vertical grip up here, and it's going to have a very easy reach to the trigger. There is one other option from MD chassis, so if you want a chassis system instead of a more traditional, laminate wood type of stock, they do have that, which I think is made of aluminum, and it's called the LSS chassis. It's going to be more expensive. It's about $400 for that, whereas the Boyds, they're going to cost, I think they're $144 a piece, and then you have shipping on top of that. So we're going to go with the laminate since we do have such a tight budget on this project. Let's see what we ended up with. I chose to order the Boyds Pro Varmint, which looks a lot like a Manners stock or a Macmillan A5. It has this nice kind of vertical grip right here. It has a pretty high cheek piece, a little bit of a toe hook right here, and it has a nice wide forearm, which is going to be really stable on bags. This is going to be an excellent prone shape. Underneath this black textured paint is a blonde laminate. Included in the purchase price are 3 swivel studs, a plastic trigger loop, and this seems to be the same shape as the Model 10 trigger loop, so if we want to swap this out for metal at some point, we can spend an extra 10 or 12 bucks to do that. There is a bead for the safety, a little piece of what appears to be plexiglass epoxied into the stock for the rear mag catch. Up here is the recoil lug, which seems to be permanently affixed inside the stock here. And then we have one more piece that comes with it, and that is the front mag catch. And the recoil screw, the action screw, actually goes right up through this and holds it in place. This is not actually permanently affixed to the stock. As it ships from Boyds, this is 90% of what I need to shoot in the competitions, but before this is really ready, I need to do 3 different types of modifications to this. First, I'm going to need to do some functional fixes on this. I'll need to do some ergonomic modifications, and then finally, if I have some time, I'll do some aesthetic ones. So first off, on the functional side, I want to make sure that there is enough room in this barrel channel so that I have plenty of relief around the barrel. And I've already put this action into the stock, and there is just a little bit of closeness between the left side of the barrel channel and the barrel itself. And under firing, that may actually cause some contact, so I'm going to relieve this barrel channel just a little bit. Also on the functional side, I want to make sure that I have a good, strong connection between the stock and the action. So I'll be putting in steel spacers here and here, some steel pillars, and I'm also going to be putting in an epoxy bedding so that instead of just using the natural surface here, I'm going to use a curved surface in here that mates perfectly with the action. I'm also going to need to relieve the trigger well just a little bit because this does not allow our trigger modifications to fix. So I'll just need to grind some of that out with a Dremel tool. On the ergonomic side of things, this rifle is pretty well set up. I do have some issues with the comb right here. This cheek piece has just a little bit too much material, which is a great way to go. If you're going to do anything, have a little bit too much material, and then you can easily scale it back. But if I get my cheek on this comb and I look down the rifle, I'm not looking directly over the action screws like I should be. Instead, I'm kind of looking a little bit off to the left. So what I'm going to have to do is just remove some material, just a little bit, on this side of the cheek piece, and then I should be in good shape. And we'll see how the height looks, but I think that this height is going to work pretty well. I'm running some pretty low scope rings. The grip overall is pretty good, but again, I'd like to make just a few modifications. I have kind of a concave hand. You can see that it's pretty dished out when I'm holding my hand like this. I just don't have a lot of meat on it. So I do like a good bit more palm swell than a lot of folks like, and this is pretty flat through here. Now I can't go adding material to the grip. What I'm going to have to do instead is remove material around this area, especially on the back side of the grip right here. I'm going to take some of this away so that the heel of my hand can kind of fall in here, and this will just feel a little bit better. Also on the ergonomic side of things, since we're looking at this kind of buttstock area, my length of pull is 14.5 inches. I'm 6'2", so I have pretty long arms. And this is coming in at 14 inches, which is really good for an off-the-line stock. It's not that often that you see a 14-inch length of pull. And just as a reminder for those that don't know about this, the length of pull is the distance from the front of the trigger face to the back of the butt pad. And yeah, for me it's 14.5 inches, so what I can do is just add a couple of spacers back here, and that should fix that issue. I don't really have any issues ergonomically with the forearm here, because this is really just going to be sitting in a rest or on a bipod or something like that. This is not going to be an offhand sort of rifle. If I do go in that direction, I might do some things to maybe narrow down this stock. You can see that right here, especially toward the foretip, look at how wide these little rails are on either side of the barrel channel. It leaves a lot of room, so if you do put in a bull barrel at a later date or a varmint barrel, you have plenty of room to do that. But it does look like it's still pretty excessive. So if I do turn this into more of a hunting style rifle at some point, then I'll probably shave that off. But for now, this is great. The final modifications are purely aesthetic. If you look down this cut right here, you can see that this is not straight at all. This was all milled out at the factory on some kind of CNC mill, and it looks like I don't know if there was just some kind of wiggle in what was going on or if the program wasn't that great, but you can see that it's really not straight. It's quite wavy, and it happens on both sides of the rifle. Let's see if you can see that pretty well. And there's just a lot of little things that are not symmetrical about this rifle. You can see that looking straight down on the top of the comb here, that the two sides are not the same. Even though I imagine that this was designed to be an ambidextrous type of stock, and then all they do is just cut out a different bolt handle notch on each side. But yeah, these are not consistent, so I'd probably want to square up some of these things. Like here's another good one right here. You can see that this side of the stock, this little rail, is quite fat, and then suddenly it just kind of slopes off and gets skinny back here, and over here this one stays kind of wide. These really need to be just made symmetrical, and they need to be made straight if this is something that I want to feel proud about later. We'll see if I have time for those kinds of mods. Also, we have what may be the fattest wrist I have ever seen on a rifle stock. The tang of this rifle is going to come in right here. It's going to end right here. And we're left with this really big fat wrist. So I'll show you some footage of my 12FV stock and what I did to the wrist on that thing to make it just a bit more of an elegant, smooth curve. It's going to fit just a little bit better when I go to reach up for the safety. It's going to just feel a little better there, but mostly it's for looks. And the Savage Axis, like I've mentioned before, is a particularly ugly rifle. So if I can do anything to help offset that ugliness, possibly by making this line a little smoother, just kind of cut through here and roll all this a little further up toward that tang, then maybe I can make that axis a little bit less gawping. It's difficult to see through the camera, but the forearm tip is also not quite square, so I think I'm going to be fixing that. The reshaping work is naturally going to take this wonderful textured, kind of pebbled looking black finish off the rifle, so I will need to refinish this. I might stain and reseal it, or I might do some kind of Duracoat job. Those of you who have seen some of my older videos, you know that I've done some Duracoat camouflage that's pretty effective. But who knows, I might take this in a different direction. We'll see.